So Trump talks about how we're getting so rich off the global tariff wars, how we're getting so rich that we're making billions and trillions of dollars off of tariff. This is how tariff works. The foreign nations that are supplying orders, because that's what it is, orders. American companies, they order products to come into this country. So these companies, these foreign companies, these foreign suppliers, when they're imposed upon with tariffs, now they got an excuse because of the tariffs to raise their prices, the amount, the percentages of those tariffs that are inflicted upon them. So in a way, they're making more money because now they got to charge Americans that much more percentages depending on what type of tariff percent that Trump imposes on those nations abroad. So now they got an excuse, those foreign nations and their foreign businesses, to raise their prices to account for Trump's tariffs. So once those products are imported to the port of entry, the ones that are paying for that tariff are the American companies. The American companies have to pay the American government the percentage of those tariffs in order to receive those products in the port of entry when the cargo ships pull up to America. So it's the American companies, when they got to pay that increased to the suppliers abroad, to the suppliers, because the suppliers are not paying for that out of the kindness of their heart and not getting nothing for it. The foreign companies, whatever country they come from, these suppliers, whatever country they reside in, whatever percentage Trump imposed on that country, now that country, businesses and corporations, now that country can make money. They're basically getting rich off of us. All the foreign nations are getting rich because now, depending on whatever percent Trump raises the tariffs on those countries, now those countries has an excuse to raise their prices to that equal matching to the tariffs that are imposed upon them. So they get to raise their prices when they ship their cargo products to America. Now, in order for the American companies to receive these cargoes, they gotta purchase and pay the American government. The American companies do. They gotta pay the IRS that percentage of tariffs. So in other words, the foreign countries and their businesses, they raise their prices and they ship their products to America. And in order for American companies to receive that product, they gotta, because of those foreign businesses, they pass the price increase on to the American companies. And it's the American companies that pay that extra price percentages of that's equal to the percentage of tariffs that Trump inflicted on those nations' businesses abroad. So it's the American companies that got to pay for that price hike. And then the American companies, when they put those products onto the shelves, the last one to pay for that product, where the buck stops, is that the American consumer got to pay for that product in the form of inflation. So if anything, Trump is making foreign nations rich because now they got an excuse to raise their prices up as they export their commodity goods to America. So they're making out like robber barons because now they have an excuse, those foreign nations, to raise the prices up. They're making out like robber barons, like bandits. They're laughing all the way to the bank. Europe, Canada, Mexico, China, Japan, South Korea, all of the nations that Trump inflicted tariffs on, they're making that much percentage gains of profit because now they get to raise their prices up every time they import their goods to America. And it's the American companies, when they receive those merchandise in the American ports of entry, in the shipping docks, it's the American companies that have to pay Uncle Sam the price hike of those tariffs. And then those American companies, when they place those commodity goods on the shelf for the American to consume it, those American companies pass the buck of the increase, meaning the bill, the purchase, receipt, to the customer, the American customer. So at the end of the supply chain, it's the American customer that is becoming broke and poor with increased inflation of consumption of commodity goods that are coming into the ports of entry, the shipping docks of America. So if anything, Trump is making every other nation rich and us poor. We're not getting rich, we're getting poor. Think about it. Those countries abroad now have an excuse to raise their prices up, because now Trump has imposed price hikes, tariffs. So now those countries and their businesses, now they have an excuse to say our products have to be this much more expensive because this is how much percentages Trump has imposed on our nations. Depending on nation you come from, you have your whatever percent tariffs that Trump imposes on your nations. Because they differ. Trump differs with certain sectors, divisions of regions. He likes to impose certain tariffs are higher, certain tariffs are lower. Whatever mood he's in the day, he makes up tariffs impulsively, sporadic, even schizophrenically. He makes up the tariffs numbers every day, depending on what side of the bed he gets out of and what mood he's in. But this idiot Trumpery, now he imposed global tariffs on all the nations on earth. So that means all the nations on earth, these other nations and their businesses, now they have an excuse to profiteer, because now they can have an excuse to raise up their prices of their goods as they ship it to America. So if anything, Trump is making every other nation on earth richer and us in America poor. Because now these nations abroad and their private sectors, their corporations, now have an excuse to raise up their products' prices as they import it, as they send it on cargo containers to America. Now, when those cargo containers reach the port of entry, the docks, it's the American companies that have to pay Uncle Sam, the IRS, those tariff prices. And I'm repeating this for y'all lame Americans, especially the dim-witted redneck hillbillies that barely understand common sense, the base of Trump. So y'all can understand that Trump ain't making us rich. On the contrary, he's making other nations rich and us poor. Now he fired the Secretary of Labor because now companies are laying off their employees. So she said that unemployment is rising, and Trump fired her because he was too embarrassed to have the American people know that unemployment under him, under his 7 months of his second term, that unemployment is on the rise. And I believe there was a Goldman Sachs economist that said that inflation has risen 2% since Trump been in office. that inflation has risen 2%, 2.5%. And Trump called the CEO of that bank and insisted that that guy get fired. And now Trump is putting martial law in Washington, and they said the mayor of Washington, D.C., said that all the statistics of crime are on a decline, around 25, 26, 27% decline, that crime is declining. But Trump said, no, crime is increasing. So Trump cooks the numbers as he goes along. He cooks the numbers to suit his own interests. And not to mention that Trump is using petrodollars to be pegged to Bitcoin, stablecoin, and other crypto companies inside the Treasury Department for he can loot it out with himself and his children. Basically Trump Jr. and Eric Trump. Because they said that because of January 6th, when they tried to overthrow the government, no bank wanted to lend to them. They closed all their bank accounts. So that's the reason they use cryptos pegged to the Treasury Department. Because they're looting out the Treasury Department and getting rich off of it. Trump has made $3.4 billion for himself since he's been president. $3.4 billion. And now they're using the Treasury Department while Trump sells oil in the Middle East, while he makes oil deals, while he tries to get back into the Russian Arctic. Trump is getting rich off of crypto because that's how they launder money into his real estate, through cryptos. They pump and dump into Trump's real estate as kickbacks through NFT cards and cryptos, investors that are shell companies, in order for Trump to make that 3 point something, in order for him to start making billions and billions of dollars out of the Treasury. You know, they had in mind to peg, I believe it was $1 million American dollars to one single Bitcoin. So every single Bitcoin, you needed 1 million American greenback dollars to buy one Bitcoin. That's how they intended to float the petrodollar within the Treasury Department with cryptos. But it was too volatile, so they decided to enter another company called Stablecoin. That one stable crypto coin was worth $1 American. And then they added another company there too, Trump Jr. and Eric, through his father, through Trump. Trump has his own World Liberty cryptos, and that's how they're looting the Treasury Department and enriching themselves with oil deals. Trump got a $400 million jet from Qatar. And all the real estate that are popping up in Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Dubai, golf courses, all the real estate that is popping up. But this is what Trump does. He peddles oil like Rockefeller's father, a con artist. And he's enriching himself through ciphering off the Treasury Department by pegging cryptos to the American petrodollar. Because if you listen to Trump Jr. and Eric Trump, they said, oh, the banks didn't want to lend to us, so we didn't have no choice but to create our own crypto company. Because no bank in the world wanted to lend to us. So now, they're scheming cryptos out of the Treasury Department while his father, Trump Sr., peddles fossil fuel deals. For the Middle East, Trump is desperate to get Exxon back in the Russian Arctic. He wanted them in his second term. He wanted Russia to be part of the G7 again, in order for Exxon to have joint venture deals. Trump wanted to conquer Canada as a 51st state and Greenland in order to run gas and oil pipelines through the Arctic and feed Europe with energy. So now you start to see how they are looting the world reserve currency petrodollar through cryptos and using the White House like their own personal bank account through the Treasury Department. So let's go back to these tariffs. The only people that are getting rich are those foreign companies that now they, like I said, and I can't underestimate, I can't mention this enough. These foreign countries' businesses, these foreign corporations, now they have an excuse to raise up their prices of their commodities as they export their products to America. Once those products in those shipping containers and those ships pull up to the American docks, the cargo ports, it's the American companies that have to pay Uncle Sam, the IRS, those price hikes equal to the amount of tariffs from which countries they come from. It's the American companies that have to pay the IRS those hike prices. And those American companies then puts those products on the American shelves with the price tag equal to the amount that they paid the IRS. So if anything, the buck stops with the American consumer, and we're that much poorer. We're that much poorer because we're at the end of that line, and the buck stops with us. So that means we're paying the tariffs in the forms of inflation by paying more money of everything because that everything is that much more expensive. So we're getting poorer, and Trump is making other businesses in other nations richer by making them have an excuse to raise up their prices as they export to America. And the American companies are getting poorer because now they got to pay more to Uncle Sam to receive those cargo containers. And now those companies are got to pass on the debt burden to the American consumers. And we're paying it as a form of taxation, which is inflation. So we're getting poorer, and the other countries abroad and their companies are getting richer. And you want to know who else is getting rich? It's Trump through cryptos in the Treasury with his two sons looting out the petrodollar through world liberty. Cryptos. Pegged to those crypto companies that they placed inside the Treasury Department, like Bitcoin, stablecoin, and this other company that they want to install inside the Treasury. They don't want to install their world liberty because they try to make it seem like there's no racketeering going on. But in reality, there was in Fox News yesterday, both of them, Eric Trump and Trump Jr., saying, we were forced to create our own crypto companies because after January 6th, they closed our bank accounts down. Capital One closed all Eric Trump's accounts. All of the banks didn't want to lend to them no more. So they were forced to create their own crypto companies. But how they did it was a pyramid scheme, a Ponzi scheme in the Treasury Department to siphon off the petrodollar with their fathers leveraging as president these oil deals regionally throughout the Middle East, throughout Europe, throughout India, throughout China. It's Trump that is peddling oil through the petrodollars pegged to cryptos. And they're siphoning it off through their world liberty companies as quid pro quos. Because these oil interests abroad, these foreign oil companies and nations and their bureaucracies, they pay Trump quid pro quos through NFT cards, and looking like they create shell companies to invest inside these cryptos, and Trump takes that and pockets it. He launders it in as profit in his net earnings, and he makes it seem like the investors lose out on their investment with speculative insider trading. In other words, these foreign companies and these foreign sovereign leaders, they launder money into Trump's cryptos knowing that they're not going to see a profit of that back because it's a payment. It's a blockchain. It's a payment. In other words, let's say I'm a foreign nation leader and I need oil from America and gas, or I need to set up pipelines that traverse my territory and I get royalties out of it for having pipelines and gas lines traverse my territory as a sovereign leader of a foreign country. Now, let's say as a leader, foreign leader, I launder money into Trump's cryptos, knowing that I'm not going to see nothing, not a penny of that back, but it's a form of payment. But I make it look like it was an investment in the stock exchange. Knowing that my investment is going to be lost, but that's how it was intended to be. They make it look like it's investors, but in reality, it's just a payment, a quid pro quo. And Trump takes that and pockets it. And then in his corporation tax accounts, he calls it a loss, share loss in the stock exchange. You get what I'm saying? That's how they launder money. Insider trading to launder quid pro quos through cryptos. And then they own the computers, the blockchain computers, and they delete the blockchain. So if they get audited by the IRS, nothing ever happened. Because the blockchain transaction, since they own the computer, Trump Jr. and Eric, they can delete the hard drives. So there's no trail of what they're doing is money laundering. Because by owning the hard drives, the computers that are mining cryptos, if you delete the blockchain, it's like it never happened. It's like the transactions never took place. Because now, if they audit their computers, the hard drives is erased. So the blockchain it no longer exists. And so that money is already laundered by that time into Trump's real estate. So Trump is ciphering off billions and billions of dollars. He made $3.4 billion since he's been president. $3.4 billion. And he's ciphering off this money through cryptos. So he's getting rich. His sons are getting rich. Lucknick and the business oligarchs that line up behind his Secretary of Commerce, they're insider trading the stock exchange, using Trump as leverage to tariff their opponent competitors in Wall Street of other corporations. So, to recap, every business abroad now has an excuse to raise their prices up and get that much money when they ship their products to America. Because now their prices are their price hike. Now when they ship that back, when they ship that to America, now the American companies at the port of entry, at the cargo docks, now the American companies have to pay that to the IRS, that price hike. And those American companies, they pass that extra cost on to the American consumer. So if anything, Trump is taxing us into poverty with his tariffs. Now, on top of this, now let me give you another analogy for y'all can comprehend. Y'all dumb dim-witted Trump supporters. Let me give you another analogy. Now, there's almost 200 nations on Earth. Almost 200 nations on Earth. America just happens to be one, but there's almost 200 nations, meaning almost 198 or 99 nations on Earth. Other nations. Now, since Trump imposed tariffs on every nation on Earth, that means anywhere we seek to import is that much higher. So no matter where we import our products from any nation on Earth, we're paying more. Because any nation that we want to import their commodity goods into America from foreign nations, it doesn't matter what nation, we're paying more as the American consumers. But now those other nations can bypass America to consume because they have options. Now they can bargain shop. And if you ever notice the invisible hand of the economy, people want to buy products where they can get a bargain, where they can get a discount, a sale. So if you walk into a store and you see the same sneaker, one is $200 more as far as the label, and the other sneaker, and they could be genuine, the same sneaker. Would you rather pay more for something or pay less? If you can find the same sneaker but paid less, you rather pay less. If you can find the same shirts, the same purse, the same shoes, the same TVs, would you rather pay more for products or less? Everybody that consumes will say, I'd rather pay less and get the same product if I have a choice. So, those other countries have a choice to bypass America and consume from any other nation on earth for cheaper. Because now they can bypass America, these foreign nations, and buy from another country the same product but cheaper. Because they have options. They can trade with each other and bypass America. They don't need to consume from America. They can outsource their consumptions and buy from other countries. They have cheaper products as far as pricing because those other countries might not have tariffs. So those other countries can consume by bypassing and consuming from other nations and bypass and leave America without consuming from America. They can just go around America and buy from other nations because they have options. There's almost 200 nations on earth, and they have other options from other nations throughout the world where they can buy and consume from. They might have the same product but cheaper. See, and the thing is with the invisible hand of the economy is that people will always go where they can find a bargain because they want to keep money in their pockets. So they will always go to buy the same product and comb through the internet, if you will, to find the same product but cheaper as far as the pricing. So now, like I said, these other nations have options. They can trade with each other and bypass America. America is not the monopoly of all nations on earth as far as we don't produce all the commodities that the world consume. No. Those other countries have the majority of production because they're 198 nations, and America is probably just one. So those countries can trade with each other cheaper. Excuse me for my not pronouncing the word. I'm tired and but those countries can now trade with each other cheaper than to consume with America by buying from America. Because those other countries can now trade with each other directly and trade cheaply with each other than not to consume from America. In other words, not to buy more expensive American exports throughout all nations on earth. Who wants to buy from America as far as foreign nations? Who wants to buy from America when America is expensive? Because now if you want to export to other countries, those countries don't want to pay Trump's tariffs to consume from America, so they bypass America and buy from other countries. So now the global South economic systems are uniting as economical blocks, because now they can trade with each other more cheaply, more efficient, and there's more variety when those countries are combining their means of production to consume and to export it to each other cheaply, more than what it would cost to consume from America, as far as America exports to export throughout the world. So if they want to sell into America, these foreign nations, now they have an excuse to raise their prices, because America has to consume from the rest of the world, and since Trump imposed a tariff on the rest of the world, now Americans have to buy and pay expensive prices throughout the world to consume from any nation on earth, because we don't have a choice, because Trump tariffed every nation on earth. So now Americans, if we need anything from any nation on earth, we're paying that much more to consume from abroad, from any nation on earth. We don't have a choice, because Trump tariffed every nation on earth, including a desolate island full of penguins that nobody lives in. No human being lives in that little island but penguins. But you get the drift. That American consumers don't have a choice, because if we need anything from any nation on earth, we're paying that much more, because Trump tariffed every nation on earth. But those nations don't have to buy from America. They can buy from each other and leave America eating dust. And since the invisible hand is that the consumer will always seek the most price products that are at cheaper prices. So if you have the same product, but you can pay less or you can pay more, what would you rather do as a consumer? Pay less, right? The less you pay, the more you have in your pocket. The more money you have in your pocket, the more you can buy other products. So these foreign nations, they'll bypass America and buy washing machines, televisions from every other nation on earth. Cars, they'll buy it from every other nation on earth but America. Because those nations have options. They can trade with each other. They don't have to buy from America. America is just one nation. They have options to trade with each other and consume from each other and bypass America. But as Americans, we don't have those options abroad, because Trump tariffed every nation on earth. So now, if we need anything from any nation, we're paying more as Americans, because we don't have an option, because Trump tariffed every nation on earth. So we paying, regardless, we're going to pay high prices as American people in the United States of America. But every other nation on earth can say, oh no, America, to buy from America is too expensive. Let's buy from this other country. Let's buy from this other country. Let's buy from that region. Let's buy from this region. But not America, because America is too expensive. Because Trump raised the tariffs, so if these nations want to buy in America, it's too expensive. But they'll be willing to sell Americans their products, because now, when they import into America, the prices are high. In other words, they get rich. These foreign nations get rich. And since America has no choice, because we got to consume, we can't just consume from our inner country and not consume from any other nation on earth. No, America has no other choice but to consume from other regions on earth. Because if we don't, our economy will collapse. So we gotta, wherever we buy from whatever country, we're paying more. And we don't have the advantage to bypass nations, because, like I said, Trump tariffed every nation on earth. So we don't have the option to wiggle and go around other nations. No, we don't got that option because, like I said, Trump tariff every other nation on earth. So that means regardless of where we buy our products abroad, we're paying more. Even if we try to buy it from the Penguin Island, where no human beings exist, but only penguins. Because even that island is tariffed. So you start to get it. That we're going to get poorer in the form of purchasing power. When we try to buy commodity goods abroad, our purchasing power is going to be weaker. So, but those other nations will be willing to import their products into America because now they got the excuse to raise their product prices when they send it to America. And if they don't want to consume from America, these foreign nations, like I said, they can trade with, they have options to trade with other nations. There's like 98 nations they can trade with. But America, we don't have that choice. Like I said, Trump tariff every nation on earth. So regardless where we get our commodity goods from, we're paying more. But those nations, they can bargain shop. And they can bypass America and bargain shop with each other. They can have bilateral deals with each other and not concern themselves with America. They can bypass it, our country. So Trump has put us in an economical disadvantage, any way you look at it.